Tonight, in a decision that will be studied for generations, the United States Supreme Court has struck down the sweeping tariffs enacted by former President Donald Trump. This is not just a legal ruling, it's a seismic moment in American history, one that will echo through the halls of government and the corridors of global commerce for years to come. The announcement sent immediate shockwaves through Washington, catching lawmakers and officials off guard, and reverberated across the global economy. Markets from New York to Tokyo responded in real time, as investors scrambled to assess the implications of this unprecedented move. This landmark ruling fundamentally redefines the limits of presidential power over trade, setting a new precedent for how far the executive branch can go in shaping economic policy without congressional approval. Legal scholars are already calling it one of the most significant decisions of the decade. The decision caused an immediate and dramatic reaction in financial markets worldwide. Stock indices tumbled, currencies fluctuated, and commodities saw wild swings as uncertainty gripped investors and business leaders alike. The legal battle may be over, but the economic and political fallout is just beginning. Lawmakers are now scrambling to respond, with some calling for new legislation to clarify the boundaries of presidential authority, while others warn of long-term instability. The justices have drawn a clear and unmistakable boundary for executive authority, dismantling a key pillar of the Trump administration's America First strategy. This decision signals a shift in the balance of power between the branches of government and could reshape how future presidents approach trade policy. Businesses that fought the tariffs are celebrating tonight, seeing the ruling as a victory for free trade and economic stability. Yet, for many others, the sudden policy reversal creates new instability, forcing companies to quickly adapt to a rapidly changing landscape. The ruling forces a complete reevaluation of supply chains, pricing models, and international trade relationships. Companies that spent years adjusting to the tariff regime must now rethink their strategies, renegotiate contracts, and rebuild partnerships across borders. The world economy, which had adapted to the realities of the tariff regime, must now navigate a new and uncertain path. Economists warn that the transition could be rocky, with ripple effects felt in industries from manufacturing to agriculture, and in countries around the globe. As we unpack the details tonight, we'll explore the legal arguments that shaped this historic decision, the real-world impact on businesses and workers, and what comes next for presidential power and international commerce. The questions raised by this ruling will shape debates in Washington and beyond for years to come. The story is far from over. As the nation and the world adjust to this new reality, all eyes will be on the next moves from Congress, the White House, and America's trading partners. At the heart of this legal battle was the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA, passed in 1977. The Trump administration invoked IEEPA to justify broad tariffs, arguing global trade imbalances were an emergency. American businesses, from small importers to large manufacturers, challenged this, claiming the president overstepped constitutional bounds. They argued IEPA was never meant for long-term trade policy, but for sudden crises. The case became a referendum on the separation of powers. Could a president declare a trade deficit an emergency and bypass Congress? The Supreme Court sided with the businesses, reining in the law's application for the foreseeable future. This marks a definitive interpretation of presidential emergency powers in trade. The Trump administration argued IEPA gave the president broad authority to confront economic threats, including trade deficits. They claimed courts should defer to the president's judgment in national security and foreign commerce. The administration warned that judicial interference would hamper swift government action in a complex world. In contrast, American businesses argued this was executive overreach and that IEPA was never intended as a tool for general tariff policy. They warned that allowing such power would render Congress's authority over commerce meaningless. Trade deficits, they said, are chronic, not emergencies. The Supreme Court agreed, emphasizing the need for clear limits on executive power. This ruling sets a precedent for future interpretations of emergency authority. For years, American businesses, especially small and mid-sized companies, faced profound uncertainty from these tariffs. Costs could skyrocket overnight, threatening survival and making long-term planning impossible. Many were forced to choose between absorbing costs or passing them to consumers, leading to higher prices for everyday goods. The legal battle added stress, with businesses paying tariffs while hoping for uncertain refunds. Cash flow was strained, especially for smaller enterprises. Tonight's Supreme Court decision offers relief, but rebuilding supply chains and restoring stability will take time. The experience is a stark reminder of how vulnerable businesses are to sudden shifts in trade policy. The case began in the U.S. Court of International Trade, where businesses won an early victory blocking the tariffs. The government appealed, escalating the fight to the federal circuit, where divided opinions signaled the Supreme Court's involvement was inevitable. The case raised profound constitutional questions about the separation of powers and the economic impact of tariffs. Both sides pledged to appeal, making a Supreme Court showdown certain. The court's decision to hear the case underscored its national significance. By issuing its ruling, the Supreme Court has clarified the boundaries of executive power. This process demonstrates the judiciary's role as a check on the other branches. The ruling will serve as precedent for generations. While the Supreme Court's decision curtails the use of IEPA for broad tariffs, it marks a significant shift in how presidents can wield economic power. The ruling sends a clear message. The executive branch cannot use emergency powers as a catch-all tool for imposing sweeping trade restrictions. This decision is likely to reshape the strategies future presidents use when facing international economic challenges. However, it's important to note that the presidency still retains substantial authority over trade policy. The Supreme Court's ruling doesn't strip the president of all trade powers but rather narrows the scope of unilateral action. The executive branch still has a range of legal tools at its disposal to influence commerce and protect American industries. These tools, while more limited, can be highly effective when used strategically and within the boundaries set by law. For example, Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act allows the president to impose tariffs if certain imports are found to threaten national security. This provision has been invoked in recent years to justify tariffs on steel and aluminum, citing concerns over the security of domestic supply chains. These measures have had a direct impact on industries like steel and aluminum, aiming to bolster American manufacturing and reduce reliance on foreign sources. Another powerful tool is Section 301 of the Trade Act of 1974. This law empowers the U.S. Trade Representative to investigate and respond to unfair trade practices by other countries, such as intellectual property theft or discriminatory policies. Section 301 has been used to target specific countries with tariffs and other trade barriers, often as part of broader negotiations. These statutes provide more direct, though still controversial, pathways for executive action. They require the president to follow established procedures, conduct investigations, and justify actions with evidence, making the process more transparent and accountable. Future presidents may increasingly rely on these laws to shape trade policy, especially as global economic competition intensifies and new challenges emerge. However, these tools come with more specific procedural requirements and legal checks, ensuring that executive actions are carefully scrutinized and justified. The debate over presidential influence on trade is far from settled. Lawmakers, businesses, and the public continue to weigh the balance between strong executive leadership and the need for oversight and accountability. While the Supreme Court has closed one door to broad unilateral trade actions, it has left others open for more targeted and justified measures. The landscape of presidential trade authority is evolving, but it remains a powerful force in shaping America's economic future. Future trade actions will likely need to be more targeted, data-driven, and thoroughly justified to withstand legal and political scrutiny. Ultimately, this ruling may force presidents to build stronger, more transparent cases for their trade policies, working closely with advisors, legal experts, and Congress to ensure their actions are both effective and lawful. The Supreme Court's announcement sent shockwaves through the financial world, triggering immediate and intense volatility in global markets. Investors, analysts, and business leaders alike scrambled to interpret the implications as uncertainty rippled across continents. U.S. stock futures surged in the wake of the news, reflecting optimism that lower costs for businesses could boost profits. At the same time, the U.S. dollar fell sharply as traders recalibrated their expectations for international trade and currency flows. The decision effectively hit a reset button on the economic landscape, unleashing a wave of financial repositioning. Investors began shifting assets, rebalancing portfolios, and seeking new opportunities in sectors likely to benefit from the changes. For years, uncertainty over trade policy had delayed major investments and created a risk-averse climate among executives. Many companies had put expansion plans on hold, waiting for clarity that never seemed to come, until now. The ruling finally provides a measure of clarity, but it also introduces a fresh wave of volatility as markets adjust to the sudden end of billions in import taxes. Businesses must now quickly adapt to a new set of rules and competitive pressures. The impact of the decision extends far beyond Wall Street. Consumer prices, employment rates, and entire industries will feel the effects, as supply chains are reconfigured and companies rethink their strategies. Domestic industries that had been protected by tariffs may now face renewed competition from abroad, forcing them to innovate or cut costs. Meanwhile, sectors that rely heavily on imports could see their expenses fall, potentially passing savings on to consumers. The Supreme Court's decision also sends a powerful message to America's trading partners, pressuring them to reconsider their own retaliatory tariffs and trade barriers. Negotiations may intensify as countries seek to protect their interests. In the long run, this ruling could pave the way for easing global trade tensions, opening new opportunities for cooperation and economic growth across borders. However, unwinding years of trade disputes and renegotiating agreements will be a complex, drawn-out process. Economic uncertainty is likely to persist as policymakers and businesses navigate this new terrain. The economic landscape is being reshaped in real time, with every decision and reaction contributing to a new era of global commerce and competition. This case was about more than tariffs. It was a test of the balance of power in American government. For decades, Congress has delegated more authority over trade to the executive branch. This ruling pushes back, signaling that such delegation is not limitless. The decision may prompt Congress to reclaim some authority and write more precise laws. Future presidents will face a higher legal bar to use emergency powers for economic purposes. The ruling strengthens the guardrails on presidential power, reinforcing checks and balances. Presidential flexibility remains, but within clear constitutional limits. The Supreme Court's rejection of the Trump-era tariffs is a landmark event with far-reaching consequences. The ruling ends years of economic uncertainty, but brings new short-term volatility. By striking down the use of IEEPA for broad tariffs, the court has clarified the law's limits. This is a victory for businesses and a recalibration of global supply chains. The decision redraws the boundaries of presidential power, reaffirming Congress's central role in trade. The rule of law and separation of powers remain foundational. Yet the broader debate over executive authority is far from over. In a fast-moving world, where will the line be drawn next? That remains the great unanswered question.